Good evening. On behalf of Center Pharmaceuticals, I would like to welcome the speaker and the moderator for this webinar. I would also like to welcome the audience for this webinar on approach to a child with chronic cough. At the outset, I would like to thank Snarest, India's #1 prescribed anti-cold brand, which is from Center Pharmaceuticals, for sponsoring this webinar. Though she does not require any introduction, she is renowned in the field of pediatric pulmonology. I would have the privilege to introduce the speaker for today. She is Dr. Mandeep Walia, MD MNMS. She is a consultant pediatric pulmonologist and bronchoscopist at Max Saket, Delhi, as well as QRG Health City, Faridabad. She has done her fellowship in pediatric respirology from Canada and AIMS. She has worked as an ex-faculty at PGI Chandigarh as well as MAMC Delhi. So welcome, madam. It is also my extreme honor to introduce the moderator for today's webinar. It does not require any introduction, so I will keep it very, very brief. Dr. Arun Wadhwa is a consultant pediatrician from Delhi, well known to everybody of us. So welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I would request the audience, I would request the audience to key in the questions in the question box, which is just below the window screen. Now, without any further ado, I would pass on the session to Dr. Arun Wadhwa, and he will invite Madam to speak. So, over to you, sir.
Thank you. I think you've already invited Madam, and without wasting much time, we'll proceed with our presentation. Acute cough is also a problem. Chronic cough is, I think, more of a problem. So let's see what all things we can learn today about chronic cough, and then after that we can have some discussion on common things of chronic cough after the presentation. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the kind words, and it's my privilege to be sharing today this particular talk on chronic cough. Yeah, I'll just, is the presentation there? Yeah. Okay. So, we all know acute cough in children is one of the commonest morbidities that brings children to any clinics. But the chronic cough is also an entity that needs its own place because a lot of children do experience even chronic cough. So I will first begin with two case scenarios, which I will take forward through the course of this presentation to understand approach to chronic cough. So case one is Sohail. He's a 1-year-old boy who is otherwise immunized, normal growth and development, but he's been coughing for the last 1 month. His cough is dry, non-spasmodic. There is no sleep disturbance, no diurnal variation. This cough initially started as a URI, but the fever and running nose, which was present initially, it settled in about 5 days. He doesn't have any weight loss or any other problems associated with this cough. There is no past history of any recurrent cough or nebulization. Examination is essentially normal. Even chest examination is normal. He's active, playful. So this is the database of Sohail. And then we have another case, Raju, 1-year-old boy, so same age child, who is also previously healthy. He is having also cough for the last 1 month. His cough is spasmodic, barky, and dry. This cough is associated with fever and noisy breathing. And for this, he has been hospitalized because he suffered respiratory distress and was given oxygen for 3 days. But in spite of treatment with antibiotic, nebulization, oral steroids, he's only had partial response. And examination-wise, he has tachypnea, he was desaturating in room air, he has retractions, and chest shows bilateral wheeze and crackles and bilateral reduced air entry. The rest of the system is normal. So now these are two common scenarios. I'm sure all of you can, have a feeling of deja vu that, we do see these type of cases, in our daily practice. So when we come across such type of cases, the pertinent questions that as a clinician we ask is the approach to the two cases same? How are we supposed to classify chronic cough? And then the most important aspect is, do all children with chronic cough need investigation, or it is only a certain subset that needs investigation? And what is the treatment algorithm for these children? And that is what I would try to answer through this presentation. So first and foremost, definition of chronic cough. Now, there is a difference between the definition in adults and children. In children, any cough lasting more than 4 weeks is considered chronic, whereas in adults, the cutoff is 8 weeks. So why this discrepancy of 4 and 8? Now, this is primarily because we do not want to wait for 8 weeks in children so that we miss out some of the serious underlying problems like foreign body, bronchiectasis, which needs early evaluation, early treatment for children to become well. So that is why for most guidelines, cutoff is 4 weeks. Okay. Now, the approach to a chronic cough, what all does it encompasses? So basically, we have to take a good history and examination as our first step. And the purpose of this history and examination is to identify specific cough pointers, basically the red flag signs. Second step is to characterize the cough quality. It's what is the kind of sound and what is the pattern of the cough. And based on this, we decide some of the few preliminary investigations and then identify whether children need further investigations, and then we will plan treatment, which can be empirical, it could even be definite. So the first step in cough is the most important step, and the purpose of our history and examination is to identify this particular entity, which is specific cough pointer, or what we commonly call as red flag signs. So this basically denotes, if these are present, this denotes that there is some underlying condition, underlying disease that these children have. So these are the children who will need more detailed investigations compared to those who do not have specific cough pointers. So that's the purpose of identifying. So what are these? Any cough with neonatal onset, that means there is an underlying problem. We can't ignore it. Those could be congenital anomalies, congenital IU infections, or similar kind of things, but this needs evaluation. Daily moist cough. So any child who is having moist cough cannot be ignored. If it's dry cough, we will just see the algorithm later on, but wet cough definitely is very important. Other associated respiratory symptoms like chest pain, hemoptysis, any dyspnea, tachypnea, if that is also present, that needs to be picked up. Cardiac abnormalities, of course, is a separate entity and that needs detailed cardiac evaluation. Then these are the 3 Fs: fever, failure to thrive, and feeding difficulties. This definitely denotes that there is an underlying problem. Now, failure to thrive, it could be because of immune deficiency, cystic fibrosis, there could be so many other problems. Now, what kind of feeding history we should be taking in a patient of cough? So just ask, if the child experiences along with the cough, there is any choking or coughing every time that the child is feeding. Okay, and there could be, vomiting also, and child may even come up, those who have acquired problems, there may be a history of foreign body also. Then children, whether the child is neurodevelopmentally normal or not. So because neurodevelopmentally problem children, they have pulmonary aspirations also, which can cause chronic cough. And in the past, it is very important to ask whether the child has had any recurrent pneumonias in the past or recurrent illness in the past. So that means we don't just have to treat this isolated episode of cough, but there is something going on in the past itself, which means there is an underlying problem going on. So these are the pointers in the history. Then in the examination, what all we should definitely look for, any tachypnea or retractions. So that means there is significant respiratory distress that the child is having. Stridor. Any child cough and stridor. That means there is a potential upper airway anomaly that could be present. And chest examination, if it is showing all these adventitious sounds, wheezing or crepitations, there could be an underlying airway problem or parenchymal problem. Clubbing, we must look as a pulmonologist, my first on the examination, I hold the hands of the child and look at the nails, look at the fingers. So clubbing is to be picked up, which basically denotes some chronic suppurative lung disease going on. Is the child having any oxygen desaturation? And then basic investigations like X-ray abnormalities, and if spirometry is also considered as part of basic investigation, so then spirometry abnormalities also are specific cough pointers. So these are the first steps for evaluating a child with chronic cough. Then what is step 2? So step 2 then is that we identify what is the quality of the cough. Is the cough wet or dry? So even if children under the age of 5 or 6, as we all know, they will not expectorate sputum, but there is a phlegmy nature to the cough or the chesty sound, which parents and we also during our examination we can identify that this cough is not dry, it is actually a wet sounding cough, and so that is to be identified. And then the various different types of sounds may be associated in some types of coughs, and they may denote an underlying paroxysmal nature of cough that can be present in conditions like pertussis, mycoplasma, adenovirus. So those could be some of the infectious causes for paroxysmal cough. Barky nature of the cough that can be present in croup or tracheal origin of the cough, who we know characteristically is seen in pertussis. And any child with coughing and choking with feeds, that also, we should examine the child, maybe allow the child to take a feeding during our clinic visit and see, is the child feeling uncomfortable, having choking or coughing with feeds? Any stridor that is present? And is there a honking repetitive type of cough which is seen in somatic or the habit cough, which is our common, the earlier name for somatic cough. So these are some of the sounds. Now, so going back to our case 1, Suhail. So let me just recapitulate. This was a 1-year-old boy. His growth and development was normal, and he was having dry chronic cough, and rest of the examination and the past history was normal. So can we see any specific cough pointers from this history? I think the answer is there are no specific cough pointers. And all this that is marked in red are actually his specific cough pointers. He has a moist, he has associated retractions and adventitious sounds, which indicates Raju has specific cough pointers that are present. So that means Raju definitely needs, more extensive evaluation to identify the cause for this cough. So let's look at, some of the causes for dry cough. What are the causes? The common causes for dry cough that are mentioned: post-infectious cough, and then there is this cough variant asthma. Congenital airway anomalies can be one of the causes for dry cough. Foreign body aspiration can present with both wet cough or dry cough. Somatic cough, or what was earlier called as habit cough or functional cough, usually is a dry honking type of cough. And then in our country, we are endemic for tuberculosis. Even if it is a dry cough, we need to still investigate for tuberculosis. Smoke exposure in the family is another cause for dry. Now, upper airway cough syndromes, that means cough secondary to rhinitis or postnasal drip or sinusitis. Now, this is a well-described entity in adult causes for cough, but in children, it is not such a big problem, and upper airway cough syndrome is not so commonly seen in most studies that have tried to elucidate the causes of cough. And similarly, even gastroesophageal reflux alone, without other features of GRD, it doesn't cause isolated cough. So the first 6 are the common causes for dry cough. Now let's look at what is post-infectious cough and how does it behave. Now most commonly post-infectious cough is seen after viral URI, and it is even mentioned that post-viral cough may even last for up to 8 to 10 weeks. And examination in these children is essentially normal. And what is mentioned that sometimes after mycoplasma, studies have indicated that the median duration for cough may last for up to 39 days also. Range is 24 to 54. And for pertussis, the median duration of cough may even go up to 118 days. And it may even go up to ranges 154 days is the upper end. So in empyema, the studies have found that at 4 weeks, they found that 1/3 of the children were still coughing and up to 1/4 were still coughing at 6 months. So this is important because sometimes, if we know that this is the organisms that were going on, we can reassure the parents that post-viral, sometimes they can have a protracted course of the cough, so if rest of the examination is otherwise normal. So knowing these cutoffs is, important. And what is the mechanism? The mechanism for this ongoing cough is basically, there is an increased cough receptor sensitivity because of the pro-inflammatory mediators that are released during this viral infection. And there is an ongoing airway inflammation, or there is a disruption of the mucociliary apparatus. These are some of the mechanisms which continue to perpetuate this coughing mechanism, and it takes its own time, to get settled after infections. So if you look at this Suhail, who was having dry cough following URI, there were no red flags. This Suhail was actually having post-infectious cough. And what was the treatment that we gave? Just reassurance. Reassurance to the parents that there is nothing to worry. We don't need to investigate. We just need to wait and watch. And we found that gradually his cough improved over the next 2 weeks. But on the other hand, since Raju was having specific cough pointers, we needed to investigate him. His investigations revealed that his blood work, the WBC and differentials were normal. Platelets were also normal. There was anemia present. Mantoux was done because of endemicity of tuberculosis, which was negative. Blood culture was no growth. And his X-ray. This is the X-ray. It does definitely show a right side. There are infiltrates present, a few on the left as well. So definitely, X-ray is abnormal. So considering that he's having, enough specific pointers and X-ray is abnormal and it is more unilateral, we went ahead and did bronchoscopy. So, and what did the bronchoscopy show? This is the vocal cord area. Now we're going into the trachea. And can we see something popping up? Can we see this white structure? Yes. So this is a foreign body that was present in the lower 1/3 of the trachea, just above the carina. And this was the reason for his ongoing coughing and the respiratory distress that he was suffering from. So he was diagnosed with tracheal foreign body. Okay. Now I missed. Okay, yeah. So right. Is the screen visible properly? Okay. So now coming to the second entity, we are often baffled with this thought when we encounter children with dry cough. Kahin ye asthma to nahi hai? Okay. So now let's look at what the literature has to say as asthma being a cause for chronic cough. The underlying statement from most guidelines is isolated cough in children. That means these children just have cough. There is no wheezing, no shortness of breath, no atopy. It does not represent asthma. So this is a cough variant. Asthma is an entity that we often think about, but this is more common in adults rather than in children. And what are the diagnostic criteria? In cough variant asthma, there is isolated dry cough, which is more nocturnal. Spirometry does not show the classical bronchodilator reversibility that is often seen in asthma. But if we do a bronchoprovocative test, that is positive. And there is response to anti-asthma treatment. So these are the diagnostic criteria. So in children, it is not such a common entity. But at the same time, few studies have indicated that there is a subset of children who have isolated dry cough, and they also show some response to inhaled steroids, probably because they are having eosinophilic airway inflammation, even though there is no wheezing or obstruction that is present. So because of this, now European Respiratory Society, very recently, this very year, they have come up with their guidelines on the management of cough, chronic cough in adults and children. And what do they say? In response to this question, should anti-asthma medications be given to children with chronic dry cough? The answer is yes, a short-term trial of inhaled steroids for 4 to 8 weeks can be given to these children. But if there is response, we need to stop. And it is the inhaled steroids that are recommended and not oral steroids. That is an important point. Now, with regard to leukotriene, anti-leukotrienes, there is no evidence for anti-leukotrienes in the management of chronic dry cough. And it has also been written now that more than 10% of the children who are given montelukast may even experience some form of neuropsychiatric adverse effects in the form of irritability, hyperactivity, or insomnia, etc. So we should, refrain from giving montelukast as an anti-asthma option to these children. So that's about the dry cough. And then let's look at now some of the causes for wet cough. So the causes for wet cough in a country like India, the first and the foremost cause that I would like to mention is tuberculosis. And I don't need to elaborate on the protein manifestations. We've all seen, tuberculosis and its all manifestations. The next entity that is now well described in literature is protracted bacterial bronchitis. I will elaborate it subsequently. Other causes can be missed foreign bodies, and history is seen only in the 30% of the children. So we need to have a very high index of suspicion, for foreign body. Chronic pulmonary aspirations can cause wet cough, which is common seen in preterm children, children with neurodevelopmental problems, or those who have airway anomalies like tracheoesophageal fistula or tracheomalacia. And we can do a bronchoscopy and BFSS or FES to document aspirations. Cystic fibrosis again can present as chronic wet cough or recurrent pneumonias. Immune deficiency disorders, which may have multi-system or initially to begin with just respiratory problems. Primary ciliary dyskinesia. Here, children will usually have neonatal onset of respiratory distress. And then subsequently, they will keep on coming, with recurrent cough or recurrent pneumonia and persistent or recurrent nasal discharge. And we need to investigate these children, and the confirmatory test for is nasal brushings are taken, beat frequency, or electron microscopy can be done from the nasal brushing to see for the cilia and their dying arms, and or genetic testing can be done. The other causes is bronchiectasis and bronchiolitis obliterans are other causes for chronic wet cough. So definitely chronic wet cough is a far, far greater spectrum of causes, that we need to look at. So, and investigative modalities have to be accordingly chosen. Now, if let's look at, this is a multicentric study. So this is a study that was done in Australia, in 5 centers within Australia. And what they found, they followed a certain standard of, algorithm to investigate. All children were referred to them with chronic cough. And what were the most common causes that they found in their study? The 5 commonest causes they found were protracted bacterial bronchitis, asthma, bronchiectasis, or just spontaneously resolving cough, and tracheomalacia was seen in this particular cohort. But different centers, have different causes, and their prevalence percentages are, different. So, it could differ depending upon center, and also depending upon how exhaustively have we worked up the cases of cough. So that will also decide what all causes we can pick up. I would like to take now some time to describe this new entity. It is not really new now, but I think for us it is a relatively new entity, protracted bacterial bronchitis. It first appeared in the medical literature in about 2006, and there was a lot of work that was done on this in Australia by Dr. A.V. Chang. And let's look at what a typical profile of protracted bacterial bronchitis is. So basically, these children, she did her work on indigenous Australian population, and the data that came out, the typical profile is that these children, they suffer from chronic wet cough. There is no other systemic symptoms or sinus or ear problems. They are otherwise growing well, developmentally normal, and even signs also, there are no clinical signs to suggest any underlying problem. At the most, sometimes a rattly chest may be seen, may be heard, or either through ear or through auscultation. X-ray is also essentially normal, but sometimes some peribronchial changes may be seen. And spirometry is usually also normal. So most of the things are normal except for chronic wet cough that is going on. Now, what is the median age? Most of the time, this entity is seen in children under 5 years of age, but also seen in above 5, even above 12 years also. And there is an association to daycare attendance and also to tobacco smoke in the family. And prevalence of protracted bacterial bronchitis from the studies done is almost 10 to 40% children who are referred for chronic cough have been found to have this particular entity in those studies. So now, what is the diagnostic criteria that is suggested? The currently acceptable diagnostic criteria is now basically clinical. There should be continuous chronic wet cough, no other signs or symptoms that are identified, no specific cough pointers, that means. And when we give a 2-week course of antibiotic, there is resolution of cough. So the diagnosis is only established after giving a 2-week course of antibiotic and resolution occurs, then only protracted bacterial bronchitis, the diagnosis is established. The earlier diagnostic criteria had included microbiology as an essential documentation, either on the bowel or the sputum sample, but now it is currently done away with. It is only clinical. And the most common organisms that we need to cover for protracted bacterial bronchitis is H. influenza, Strep pneumoniae, Moraxella, and Staph aureus. The common organisms that we all know can cause community-acquired pneumonia also. But pneumonia is a disease that basically, it inflicts the alveoli. But this is a disease entity which is more of endobronchial inflammation and infection because of these organisms. And why it is important to treat these children is because it has been speculated and it has been found in some studies that there is a link to future bronchiectasis. If infection is allowed to linger in these children, these are the children who later on may turn up with bronchiectasis. So the suggested treatment is oral amoxicillin in standard doses for 2 weeks is able to bring about, if it is able to bring about resolution, it is considered as PDB. Okay, so that is about chronic this protracted bacterial bronchitis. I would like to take a few more cases, to go through the various causes of chronic cough and how they present. Okay, now this is another case who is a 10-month-old boy, and he was born a term baby with birth weight of 3.2 kg and has been having recurrent cough since the age of 1 month in the form of cough and noisy breathing, which is wet cough. He has had 2 hospital admissions because of this, and interval period, he has never been asymptomatic. So this is a very, very important, red flag sign that is present. And feeding history, it reveals that his noisy breathing increases when he is feeding. And he often has to detach from the breast to take rest while he's feeding. He has obvious failure to thrive. And examination-wise, he has tachypnea, retractions, and there is bilateral crepitations and wheezing, and very rattly chest he has. So what are our differentials for this child? Now, because there is an early onset of these problems, we will definitely like to keep. So he's been having feeding problems and associated cough. That means there is a possibility of pulmonary aspirations going on. And because the onset is very early on, we will like to keep congenital airway anomalies as one of the diagnostic problems. The other differentials that must be considered is primary immune deficiency, cystic fibrosis, and primary ciliary dyskinethia. So these are the differential lists that I will like to keep for this child now. So this is the X-ray. X-ray at 2 months, 5 months, it doesn't really show very significant parenchymal changes really. And this is the X-ray now at 10 months. Again, there is slight right paracardiac involvement looks to be there, but and I think there is some involvement even on the left side. So this child definitely needs investigation. So we did bronchoscopy for this child because one of the suspicions was congenital airway anomaly, and the second reason for doing bronchoscopy was to take a bowel sample for microbiological confirmation. So let's see what the bronchoscopy. So this is the upper airway, and we are going inside now. The vocal cords were closing. So can we see now? I will just freeze this. If we see, this is the anterior tracheal wall and this is the posterior tracheal wall, and they seem to be, they are approximating with each other. Let's take it back. And this is tracheomalacia. So he definitely has tracheomalacia. We go further down, and I would just like you to focus at this point where these secretions are coming, just this point. Please focus on this point, and you will be able to see a hole-like thing that is visible. This. I just hope you're able to appreciate this hole. So this is the tracheal opening of a tracheoesophageal fistula. So this child has, this is the carina which was normal. So this child has tracheoesophageal fistula, which was subsequently confirmed, and it was then operated upon, and so we can see the hole now. The secretions are gone. So it's a longish case. I will go through this case. This is a 10-year-old boy who has been recently diagnosed with Mycoplasma pneumonia, which was PCR positive, and at that time he presented with fever, cough, rashes, and respiratory distress. And his viral panel was negative, and this pneumonia was treated with azithromycin, and following which was discharged once he became well. But when he went home, he continued to have a wet cough, and this cough was not accompanied by any fever. But 3 weeks later, he started experiencing shortness of breath, and he was barely able to now climb the stairs also in his house. There was no wheeze or hemoptysis, and he had never had past history of asthma. And he was treated by the local GP with antibiotics, bronchodilators, and oral steroids. But this did not really improve his symptoms. And finally, after 2 months for these ongoing symptoms, he was readmitted. And at the time of admission, he had obvious tachypnea. There was desaturation. He was saturation was just about 98% in room air, with bilateral craps and wheeze. So in the ED, he was managed on asthma protocol, but this continued to still worsen, and he was then shifted to the PICU, started on BiPAP with FiO 2.3, and which was subsequently weaned after 2 days to high flow nasal cannula. And so it took a protracted course, to get settled. So if you look at his, then he was investigated, and his blood culture was no growth. Sputum examination for microbiological examination was also negative. This MPW was repeated, but mycoplasma was negative. And immune workup was done. Echo was also normal. Immune workup was also normal. So these preliminary, these investigations for him were normal. And this is the X-ray of this patient. So what we can see, there is bilateral significant hyperinflation that can be seen, and there isn't much of infiltration or any consolidation that is seen on the X-ray. So because of this hyperinflation and this ear trapping, CT scan was also done. And what we see on the CT, these are the inspiratory and the expiratory film. So on the expiratory film, we can see there is mosaic attenuation, and everything should appear gray like this on the expiratory films. But a lot of areas are still very dark and black, which actually is because of underlying ear trapping. So this hyperinflation is because of the ear trapping that he's having, which is because of a small airway disease. And further cuts also reveal, if you can see this, there is bronchiectatic changes that are the airways are bigger than the accompanying the arterial the arteries that is present. So this, he had already started showing features of bronchiectasis. So because of these features and with a preceding mycoplasma infection, we also did a PFT, and lung function test showed severely reduced. If you look at his FEV1, it is 21 and 23%. And this is a mixed type of a pattern. Both obstructive and restrictive airflow defect was present. And he was therefore diagnosed with post-infectious bronchiolitis obliterans secondary to mycoplasma pneumoniae. He was treated for this with oxygen and methylprednisone pulses, 30 milligram per kg for 3 days. And in the interval, he was also added oral prednisone and given inhaled steroids also. But in spite of giving, many courses of pulse methylprednisone, he was still, his lung function could not, improve. And this is a case, that was diagnosed when I was doing my fellowship in Canada. So this patient was subsequently then registered for their lung transplantation program. So this is how sometimes infections can take such a sinister course if, something like bronchiolitis obliterans supervenes. Suspect post-infectious bronchiolitis after an LRTI. If there is wheezing or crackles or dyspnea, it persists for more than 3 to 4 weeks. X-ray changes may be minimal, and the diagnosis is based on spirometry showing an obstructive airflow defect, which is not reversible. And on CT scan, there is mosaic attenuation, ear trapping, and bronchiectasis. Now, these days, lung biopsy is not considered really essential. Based on these above parameters, we can diagnose and start treatment. And systemic steroids, many courses may be required. So I think I am almost done with my presentation, and in the last, I would like to now describe the cough assessment algorithm that is proposed by very recent guidelines from European Respiratory Society. So how do we go about, in an algorithmic way in approaching a child with chronic cough? So what ERS says, if there is a child who has chronic cough more than 4 weeks, first take detailed history to identify any cough pointers if they are present. So identify red flags. They are the most important step. Get a preliminary chest X-ray, and if the age of the child is above 6-7 years and you have facility, get a spirometry done to see if there is any restrictive pattern or obstructive pattern or a mixed pattern on the spirometry. Now, if specific cough pointers are present, then we obviously need to investigate and treat accordingly. But if there are no specific cough pointers, then what do? We now decide and characterize whether the cough is wet cough or a dry cough. Now, if it is a dry cough and there are no specific cough pointers, then we check for any irritants like tobacco smoke exposure in the home, or rule out any precedent upper respiratory infection that the child might have recently had. And if there are no other features that are present, we can still follow these children with wait and watch protocol for another 4 weeks, just reassure the parents. So now it is total 8 weeks. If there is a spontaneous regression, you just follow these children until resolution. But if it is still persisting, the cough is still persisting, then European Society now says we can give them a trial of anti-asthma medication in the form of inhaled steroids, budesonide, for example, 200 to 400 microgram per day for 4 to 8 weeks. This is a trial of therapy that can be given, and if there is resolution, yes, you stop the therapy and just follow up for recurrence. And if it is still persisting after this trial, do not hike up the doses, but investigate the child for now some other underlying problem that could be present. This is for the dry cough. For wet cough, the protocol is, now we first try and establish if there is some microbiological identification, if it can be done. So go for sputum microbiological, a non-invasive lower airway specimen should be taken, get a culture. So although the ERS doesn't include TB, but I think we are in a TB endemic country, I think our sputum examination should also include TB workup. If there is, whether the sputum is positive or not, and if TB workup is negative, and there is wet cough, treat with antibiotics. So for protracted bacterial bronchitis for 2 weeks. If cough resolves with this 2 week of antibiotic, we diagnose this condition as protracted bacterial bronchitis. But if cough still persists, that means there needs to be more further investigations, either a CT scan or bronchoscopy for some underlying disease. So this is, in a nutshell, the cough algorithm proposed by European Respiratory Society. I will just wind up with the take-home messages from today's presentation will be that any child who is having a cough going on for more than 4 weeks, look for any specific cough pointers or red flags. And once if they are identified, these children should be segregated from those children who can just be put on wait and watch. So they need to be identified. The other important message is isolated cough in children do not typically represent asthma. Now, if there is wet cough and no other pointers, we can try oral antibiotics for 2 weeks for covering protracted bacterial bronchitis. And if there are cough pointers, investigations are definitely warranted. So that's about it. And yeah, thank you. And I would also like to thank our sponsor, Centre, for taking up this initiative and doing all the hard work without, I think there were no glitches also in the presentation so far. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to come up with this topic and present it to the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mandeep. It was really wonderful. And I was wondering, people who haven't joined, they've actually missed something. So probably we'll have to do it again for them if they've missed. And, you know, also learned, I'm sure lots of people also must have learned that, you know, sinus and GRD is not so common in children. Whenever the child coughs on lying down or in the night, you know, even the parents come up, isko sinus ho gaya. You know, even if the child is 1 year, 2 years old, they would say, isko sinus ho gaya. And also, I was really happy that you brought up that PBB. You know, even I didn't know after 3-4 years before I heard this first time. And now, of course, in all these chest presentations, it's a common thing. What I wanted to know was, I think in our clinical practices, post-infectious cough is the commonest thing we would see. You know, especially in certain seasons when you have more of adenoviruses, change of seasons. So how in a, you know, clinically, how can you differentiate? You know, okay, it's good CT, X-ray, secretion, culture, but in a clinic, can somebody say differentiate between PBB and post-viral cough?
So to my understanding, most of the post-viral cough is usually a dry cough. For the
Definitely.
first 1 or 2 weeks, you know, this cough can be, you know, wet cough when the acute phase of the infection is going on. But when it is a protracted post-viral cough, it is usually a dry cough. And the child is otherwise, you know, happy child. It is parents who are more concerned rather than the child himself, you know, suffering from anything.
So does this happen that post-infectious cough is more common in children who have allergies or hyperactive airways or asthma histories, or can be with any child?
So post-infectious cough, the risk factors do not really mention that, you know, but daycare attendance and having exposure to irritants will definitely mean that there is an ongoing airway inflammation which is present. The mechanism that is really described is basically a cough receptor sensitivity is increased. And definitely tobacco smoke exposure, you know, is one of the irritants that definitely needs to be eliminated from the household, you know. So irritant exposure needs to be looked at.
So that could be a reason.
That they have this kind of, but I think we needn't, the minute we talk of irritants and, you know, pollens and all these things, we start thinking, let's try and give them a trial of anti-asthma medication if that will work, and especially oral steroids. Bronchodilator, even oral steroids also. So I think that is what we should refrain from. And
but do cough syrups have any role here?
No, I think cough syrups have no role even in acute cough also. What will they have in?
As good as honey.
As good as honey, yeah.
And so, what about somatic cough? Do you write cough syrups for them? What do you do exactly for somatic cough? Very difficult to treat. They don't want to see a psychologist.
Yeah.
You can't leave them alone. You, in your heart, you also feel that maybe there's something wrong which we're missing. You know, so.
No, I think like if I say these two type of children, you know, I think there is a gut feeling, an intuitive feeling that, you know, this is actually somatic cough only and nothing else.
Most of these children of somatic cough, what I see is that, you know, they're happy when they're sleeping, happy when they're watching television or playing, and just like, you know, once they're engrossed, they're fine. As soon as you talk about it or they're free, suddenly they start coughing.
Yeah, this girl that I showed, she used to have this bout for hours. But when she was also very fond of dancing. So whenever she used to dance with her sister, she could go on for 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours also dancing. Which is, you know, like if you're thinking of asthma, asthmatics will get dyspneic or breathless or have some coughing episodes after physical exertion. Whereas somatic cough, you know, if you engage them, they will not have, you know.
So what do you feel is the exact reason for somatic cough? Attention seeking? Or a psychological issue?
Psychologically, you know, what are the stressors? Literature is like, you know, there is some underlying, you know, this is basically now a somatization, that there is a physical symptoms to some psychological stressor that is going on. But what has been found is that the inciting event is irritation to the airway mucosa by a preceding URI. So they do have some sensation in their airways, which actually begins this cascade of events. And because they are, you know, injuring by repeated coughing, there is a further inflammation, further injury to the mucosa. So this repetitive cycle needs to be broken.
No, even I feel most of the time it starts as a viral, post-viral cough or an allergic cough, and gradually leads on to a habit cough. It's not habit cough straight away.
Yeah. So they say that they do have some sensation. It is not always in the brain, but
Some
there is
irritation
something.
is there.
Yeah, that sensation is real. It's not always brain which is making those sensations.
So there are some questions also, not too many, and we as it is are nearing time. Dr. Sudha from New Delhi has asked, how often is pulmonary eosinophilia a cause of chronic dry cough in India? Or maybe in Delhi, you can say. Chronic dry cough.
So pulmonary eosinophilia and its association with chronic cough has not been really seen, and FeNO, which is one of the biomarkers or one of the modalities, is not suggested to be used in children for investigation for chronic cough. So we don't see so much of,
especially in children in Delhi, probably. Gone are the days when we used to rise hetrazan very often, any eosinophil count which is high, hetrazan treatment 21 days.
Yeah, but then in those patients, the eosinophilia used to be more than 3,000.
Yeah.
And there were always X-ray changes that were present. So that means they did have some specific cough pointers. There were red flags. X-ray did show some fleeting infiltrates or, something that was present.
Dr. Kulraj Kapoor from Rajouri Garden, New Delhi has asked, can we control asthma with Montelukast and levocetirizine combination? I think that combination itself is useless. To stop.
So this is the only country in the world.
Yeah.
This is the only country in the world where Montelukast and levocetirizine or cetirizine is actually nowhere in the European.
Change the question. We can change the question. Can asthma be controlled with Montelukast and levocetirizine used separately together?
Sorry. Just say that again.
The same thing. That can we control asthma with Montelukast and levocetirizine?
So big no.
So I've removed the combination separately if you use.
So whether it is in combination, whether it is without combination, Montelukast per se is found to be always inferior to inhaled steroids as a treatment modality for asthma.
Yes, so it's the only thing. If you have to control asthma, levocetirizine has no role, Montelukast almost no role. Please use inhaled steroids for a long time.
And now FDA has come up with, and I think we all need to be aware, the FDA has given that red box warning also about Montelukast, that it causes so much of neurobehavioral problems in children.
Yes.
So
no, we've also had children who had hallucinations, bad dreams, and had to stop. Actually, I'm not a fan, but sometimes you just have to write.
Yeah.
And Dr. Kapoor can tune in on 4th of June, 7:30. You're giving guidelines on GINA. Dr. Mandeep is talking about GINA, so tune in then.
Updated 2020. So how GINA,
yes.
is different.
Updated
2020.
guideline. Yes.
Yeah.
Then Dr. Anmol, same area, Tilak Nagar. Any relevant investigation for protracted PBB, bacterial bronchitis?
So
any relevant investigation?
So one is X-ray. So X-ray it does come up in the, even much before in the algorithm. And secondly, if those children, the age of the child is that we can produce, get a lower airway specimen, sputum, then we should go for sputum investigation for culture. So these two we should try and attempt.
Sputum
and I
culture in children, is it easy to get sputum culture in children?
So that's what I'm saying, depending upon the age of the child.
Okay.
Children above 6-7 years of age who can expectorate, we should
Otherwise, what about gastric lavage, like what you do for tuberculosis?
So gastric lavage is mentioned in the context of tuberculosis.
Not for this.
But gastric lavage for bacterial culture is not mentioned anywhere.
I think easier to give an antibiotic.
Yeah, so it is easier. So
if the child is getting worse or phlegm or loss of appetite or wet cough from dry to wet, then I think, I'm sure we would think twice. Lots of people give it on their own. The patient might give it on their own.
Yeah, and I was quite surprised. The ERS guidelines or any other guidelines have not mentioned tuberculosis, anywhere in their,
they don't see
in the algorithm, because probably it's not relevant for them. But can we as pediatricians, not investigate for tuberculosis? Wet cough.
We have to. We should modify the guidelines in context to our country.
Yeah, so I think we need to keep that as a possibility.
So Dr. Ajay Kumar Jain from Merit, why we not seem to diagnose PPP here in India? Is it because children here keep receiving too frequent antibiotics as compared to the West? Otherwise also probably.
So I think one of the reasons is that PBB as an entity is a very new entity. Yeah, so I think 2006 is like, just a few years back.
I heard only 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, so it is a very, very new entity. But I think if we ask our, senior pediatricians, they have been treating something called as chronic bronchitis with antibiotics always. And secondly, for our bronchi, we see enough bronchiectasis in our, at least in public sector hospitals. I used to see a lot of bronchiectasis, but never really was able to find an underlying cause. What was the cause for bronchiectasis in our children? Was it post-infectious? Was it PBB? Was it missed foreign body? Or was it post-tuberculosis? There we can maybe see. But
I think more often what happens is that the cough is not going, people write an antibiotic without making a diagnosis of PBB. So they don't need to write a diagnosis. They would write post-viral infection or something and write an antibiotic.
Right.
PBB diagnosis is not there.
Yeah, but then I think in those children, antibiotics are mostly given for 5 or 7 days. Here, if we have to treat an endobronchial infection, the duration is minimum 2 weeks. And I did not mention in my presentation, they even go up to 4 weeks also. It is only after 4 weeks of antibiotic, there is another entity called as resistant PBB.
RPBB.
Yeah, RPBB. So yes, so that comes after 4 weeks of antibiotics.
Dr. Hema Mittal, she's from Delhi. She wants to know, your case of PEF did not have any history of choking, vomiting. There was no history of these.
No, feeding history was there. I mentioned in one of the red flags.
So maybe she missed.
Yeah. So that child was having feeding problems. That is one of the history that needs to be taken in all young children, who present with moist cough, recurrent pneumonias, recurrent cough. Feeding history is imperative.
Dr. Vasudev from Apollo Hospital, he has asked a question. He's a nephrologist. In my patients with nephrotic syndrome, we are seeing wheezing more often than other children. Is there any specific reason? So Dr. Vasudev probably has a study of normal children and nephrotic syndrome children, comparative
Wheezing
trial.
more common in nephrotics.
Yeah. I think it should be less common. They are on steroids all the time.
Yeah, I mean, like this is, yes.
But is there a study that nephrotic syndrome will have more wheezing than normal children? Any comparative study, trial?
I have not come across in...
So it's an observation, no? Observational studies don't have much value unless proven.
Yeah, so
maybe you can do, Dr. Vasudev can do a study.
Yeah, I think
in the Apollo Hospital, he can see normal incidents and then along
he can have age-matched controls.
Yes.
And, but no, this is not mentioned anywhere in the literature.
Dr. VK from Delhi, as bronchoscopy is not a commonly used procedure, how do you decide about it? How do you decide when to bronchoscope?
So in the context of chronic cough or otherwise, so I think, you see, if there is a child who is, so bronchoscopy can have many indications. There can be acute indications, there can be chronic indications. And if we look at patients in what are the common causes, what are the common indications for bronchoscopy, in my clinical practice, stridor in small children. So congenital airway anomalies. Whenever I'm suspecting congenital airway anomalies, this bronchoscopy is indicated. If I have to work up a child who has no way that I can take a lower airway specimen for microbiological confirmation, so I need bronchoscopy for BAL sample. And then of course, as diagnostic workup for recurrent pneumonias, recurrent cough or persistent cough, these children need bronchoscopy for that. So
yeah, so you've finished? Sorry.
So two main indication for bronchoscopy is one is if we want to have a look at the airways, structural or anatomical entities we want to diagnose, and second is we want to take bronchoalveolar lavage, or we want to go for an endobronchial biopsy if there are mediastinal lymph nodes. These are some of the pertinent indications for bronchoscopy in our children. Cancer is not so much common as in adults, but but main cause is these upper airway, these structural anomalies and microbiology, BAL or biopsy.
Going back to, actually the questions are finished. Going back to Dr. Vasudev's question, I hope he hasn't logged out and is still around. Second thoughts, even I feel all these children who have had leukemia treatment, who's had transplant, who are on these chronic therapies tend to have more allergies. I think something to do with the imbalance of Th1, Th2 developing. So they tend to have more allergies, skin allergy, asthma, wheezing. Somehow, second thoughts, I feel he has a point there.
And what is the age group of these children? Are they less than 5 or more than 5?
Nephrotic syndrome is usually smaller children.
Smaller children.
Yeah, so most of our patients, if I recollect, all these asthma transplant patients are also similar age group, 3 to 6, 7.
So even in
maybe some imbalance, Th1, Th2 imbalance happens because of recurrent treatment, steroids or.
And as it is, the community prevalence of wheezing in under 5 children is almost to the tune of 40% also. So a sizable proportion of children are wheezing otherwise. So.
But I think if he has made an observation, it's a point well.
Yeah, sure. I think that needs hypothesis should be tested. So,
yes, hypothesis. So there are no more questions. I think we've also finished 1 hour plus. We'll call it a day. And thank you so much, Dr. Mandeep, for finishing in time. Such a good explanation. Whoever missed it, maybe next time. See you.
Sure. And thank you so much to all the audience for all the patience they have shown to listen to me. And
thank you, Centaur, also.
And thank you to Centaur, and thank you to Dr. Vadva also for moderating this session. So
it was a good learning experience.
So thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Stay safe, ma'am.